Somewhere in the Nevada desert, 83 miles northwest of Las Vegas, there is a place that does not exist. No address, no sign, no acknowledgement. Armed guards patrol its perimeter around the clock. Motion sensors cover every approach. The airspace above it is permanently restricted, closed to every civilian aircraft on Earth. And if you drive toward it on the long, empty desert road, white trucks appear on the ridgelines. Watching you, following you, waiting. For decades, if you asked the United States government whether this place was real, they would tell you it wasn't. They lied. For nearly 60 years, one of the most powerful governments in human history maintained an official position that a base employing hundreds of people with runways visible from space simply did not exist. The question was never whether they were hiding something. The question was what? The story begins not with aliens but with war, the Cold War. The most dangerous standoff in human history. Two superpowers, America and the Soviet Union, each armed with enough nuclear weapons to end civilization, circling each other like wolves. And in that world, information was everything. The Americans needed to know what the Soviets were building, where their missiles were, what their military capabilities looked like from the air. But you cannot simply fly a military aircraft over Soviet territory. That is an act of war, so the CIA went looking for another way. In April 1955, a CIA officer named Richard Bissell flew over the Nevada desert in a small aircraft, alongside a colonel named Osmond Ritland and a brilliant aircraft designer named Kelly Johnson. Below them, a flat, remote dry lake bed, miles from the nearest town. Hidden between mountain ranges, invisible from any road. Johnson looked down and said, "This is perfect." The location was designated on old Atomic Energy Commission maps as Area 51. And within months, the most secretive military installation in American history began to take shape. The first aircraft tested at Area 51 was unlike anything the world had ever seen. It was called the U-2, a single-seat spy plane so sleek, so light, so radical in design that it could fly at 70,000 feet, higher than any military aircraft had ever flown. Higher, the CIA believed, than any Soviet radar could reach. Higher than any Soviet missile could touch. From that altitude, the U-2 could photograph a territory 400 square miles in a single pass. Every missile silo, every military base, every weapons facility deep inside the Soviet Union, captured in photographs so sharp you could read a license plate. The U-2 was America's eye in the sky, and Area 51 was where it was born. Workers were flown in daily from Burbank, California on unmarked aircraft. They signed documents so restrictive they could not tell their families where they worked. Some told their wives they were based at a radar installation in the desert. Others said nothing at all, because if the Soviets ever discovered what was happening in that Nevada lake bed, the advantage would be gone. For years it worked. The U-2 flew deep into Soviet airspace. Photographed military installations the Americans had never seen before. Confirmed the location of nuclear sites, changed the balance of the Cold War. And every time a Soviet radar operator picked up a strange blip at 70,000 feet, every time a pilot reported a silver dart too high to intercept, those reports were filed away as unidentified flying objects. Then on May 1, 1960, everything changed. A U-2 piloted by a man named Francis Gary Powers was shot down over the Soviet Union. The Soviets had developed a surface-to-air missile capable of reaching 70,000 feet. Powers survived the crash. He was captured and paraded before the world as proof that America had been caught lying. President Eisenhower had publicly denied any spying operations. Now the Soviets had the pilot, the wreckage of the aircraft, and the photographs it was carrying. It was one of the most embarrassing moments in American Cold War history. Powers was eventually released in 1962, exchanged for a Soviet spy on a bridge in Berlin. A story so remarkable, Steven Spielberg turned it into a film. But the program didn't stop. Area 51 simply moved on to the next aircraft. Something even faster, even higher, even more impossible, the A-12 OXCART. If the U-2 was extraordinary, the A-12 was from another world. A sleek black titanium aircraft that could fly at more than 3 times the speed of sound. 3,000 miles without refueling, at altitudes above 80,000 feet. When it flew over the Nevada desert on test runs, the sonic booms shook the windows of Las Vegas casinos 60 miles away. Civilians who caught a glimpse of it in the sky reported seeing a silver disk moving impossibly fast, making no sound. Until the sound hit them, the UFO hotline rang off the hook. Reports flooded in from across Nevada, the government's response, weather balloons. Unusual atmospheric phenomena, nothing to worry about. The CIA's own documents, released decades later, admit it openly. U-2 and OXCART flights accounted for more than half of all UFO reports in the United States during the late 1950s and throughout the 1960s. The flying saucers people were seeing were American, built in the Nevada desert. By human hands, paid for by the United States government, and the government knew it. And said nothing. Then came the F-117, the Nighthawk. The world's first operational stealth aircraft. A plane so bizarre in its angles and geometry, so unlike anything in aviation history, that it seemed genuinely impossible. A triangle of black panels, designed to scatter radar signals in every direction, rendering the aircraft functionally invisible to enemy detection. The F-117 was developed at Area 51 from the late 1970s. It first flew there in June 1981. It was declared operational in 1983. And for 5 full years after that, it flew missions without the public knowing it existed. When it flew at night over the Nevada desert, witnesses on the ground reported a black triangle in the sky. Moving silently, changing direction in ways conventional aircraft could not, hovering. Disappearing, reappearing, the reports went into the UFO files. The truth went into a vault. The U.S. Air Force didn't officially acknowledge the F-117 existed until November 1988. 5 years of a real aircraft, creating a legend it never intended to create. And then the workers started getting sick. This is the part of the Area 51 story that gets far less attention than the alien theories. And it is, arguably, the darkest chapter of all, because the real cover-up at Area 51 wasn't about flying saucers. It was about men who had given years of their lives to classified programs, who had signed documents promising never to speak of what they saw, who had worked in conditions they were never told were dangerous, and who were dying. Throughout the late 1970s and into the 1980s, workers at Groom Lake were ordered to burn materials used in the construction of classified aircraft. Resins, paints, solvents, stealth coatings, entire tractor-trailers were set alight. Old computers, classified equipment, all of it doused with jet fuel, ignited with road flares, and burned in huge open trenches. Armed soldiers with M16 rifles stood guard as the fires burned. The workers breathed the smoke, day after day, month after month, year after year. A sheet metal worker named Robert Frost began developing a serious liver disease. Biopsies showed his tissues were saturated with industrial toxins, rarely found in the human body at all. He died in 1990. He was 57 years old. Another worker named Wally Kassa worked at Area 51 until he was 69, becoming too sick to continue. He later developed cancer. When these men tried to find out what chemicals they had been exposed to, the government refused to tell them. In 1994, 5 workers and the widows of Frost and Kassa sued the United States Air Force and the Environmental Protection Agency. They asked for one thing, just one: tell us what we were exposed to, so we can get the right medical treatment. The government's response was extraordinary. They invoked what is called the state secrets privilege, a legal doctrine that allows the government to argue that proceeding with a case would endanger national security. The Air Force said that disclosing what chemicals were burned at Area 51 would allow foreign governments to deduce how America built its secret aircraft. The mosaic theory, they called it, Even innocuous information could be assembled into a picture. The judge agreed, the case was dismissed, the widows appealed. The appeals court upheld the dismissal. The Supreme Court refused to hear the case. And so the men who built America's most secret aircraft, who breathed the smoke of burning classified materials for years, died without ever being told what had been done to them. That is not a conspiracy theory. That is a matter of court record. Then in 1989, a man appeared on Las Vegas television and changed everything. His face was hidden. His voice was altered. He called himself Dennis. And he claimed that the U.S. government was hiding something far beyond spy planes. Within months, he removed the disguise. His name was Bob Lazar, and his story was this. He claimed to be a physicist. He claimed he had been hired by the U.S. Navy to work at a classified facility called S4, located just south of Area 51. And at S4, he said, he had been shown 9 spacecraft, not American aircraft. Not Soviet aircraft, craft not made by human hands. He claimed he was part of a team assigned to reverse engineer the propulsion system of one of them. A craft that used an exotic element he called element 115 as a power source. An element, he said, that generated a gravity field capable of bending space itself, making faster-than-light travel theoretically possible. He described the craft in precise detail, the interior, the control mechanisms, the materials it was built from. He said he was fired after bringing friends to the edge of the base one night to watch a test flight. A sheriff's deputy spotted them leaving, reported it to the base. And Lazar's clearance was revoked. The story was sensational. And immediately, people started pulling it apart. The universities he claimed to have attended, MIT and Caltech, said they had no record of him. His claimed employment at the Los Alamos National Laboratory turned out to be as a contractor's technician, not as a physicist. His criminal record included a conviction related to a prostitution ring. Investigators and journalists who examined his story found fabrications throughout his background. And yet something strange happened. After Lazar's story went public, Area 51 suddenly became the most talked-about military installation on Earth. And the pressure on the U.S. government to acknowledge its existence became impossible to ignore. In 2013, 24 years after Lazar first appeared on television, the CIA formally acknowledged that Area 51 exists. For the first time in its history, through a Freedom of Information Act request filed in 2005, declassified documents confirmed the base's location. Its history, its purpose, the U-2, the OXCART, the F-117. The documents confirmed that the UFO sightings were real, in the sense that people had genuinely seen something unexplained in the sky. They just weren't alien. The CIA admitted that pilots and radar operators reporting those objects were routinely told they had seen weather phenomena. Natural atmospheric events, nothing extraordinary. The government had been systematically lying to its own people for 60 years. Not about aliens, about aircraft, but here is what the declassified documents did not explain. They did not explain what Area 51 is doing today. The base is still active, still expanding, according to satellite imagery that analysts study closely. New hangars have been built, new runways extended, new facilities added. Whatever was being tested there in the 1950s and 60s and 80s was eventually declassified, because the technology had moved on. Which means whatever is being tested at Area 51 today is equally decades ahead of what the public knows about. Aircraft we haven't imagined, weapons systems we haven't conceived of. Technologies that would look, to ordinary eyes, exactly like something from another world. In 2019, a Facebook event called Storm Area 51 attracted 2 million people who clicked attending. They showed up to a small Nevada town near the base, thousands of them. In alien costumes, holding signs, the U.S. Air Force responded with a statement. Area 51 is an open training range for the United States Air Force, and we would discourage anyone from trying to enter the area where we train American armed forces. The U.S. Air Force always stands ready to protect America and its assets. That last line was not an accident. So what is the U.S. government really hiding at Area 51? The honest answer is probably several things at once. Advanced aircraft that make the F-117 look primitive. Drone technology that operates beyond anything publicly acknowledged. Electronic warfare systems. Weapons programs so classified that the people who work on them cannot tell their families their job title. Is there something else? The government's own track record makes it very difficult to simply take their word for it. These are the same people who spent 60 years denying the base existed, who told dying workers they couldn't know what chemicals had been used on them, who told the public the things in the sky were weather balloons, while their own pilots were flying them. In June 2019, a YouGov poll found that 54% of American adults believe the government knows more about UFOs than it is telling. In 2020, the Pentagon officially released 3 videos of unidentified aerial phenomena, objects moving in ways that defied the known laws of physics. No wings, no propulsion system, no explanation. In 2021, the U.S. government published an official UAP report. It documented 144 encounters between military pilots and unidentified objects. Of those encounters, only one was explained. The other 143 remain unresolved. Here is what we know for certain. Area 51 exists. The U.S. government lied about its existence for 60 years. Workers there were exposed to toxic chemicals and denied the right to know what those chemicals were. U-2 and OXCART flights generated more than half of all UFO reports in America during the 1960s. The government knowingly allowed those reports to circulate as genuine sightings, rather than reveal the truth about their aircraft. And the base is still active today, still growing, still classified at the highest level. Here is what we do not know, what is being developed there right now. What happened to the 143 unexplained aerial encounters? Whether the explanation for Area 51's continued secrecy is merely technology. Or something more, the desert keeps its secrets well. The warning signs at the perimeter read, use of deadly force authorized. Not private property, not keep out, deadly force authorized. For a base that doesn't exist, so tell me, do you think spy planes are still the whole story? Or is there something in that desert that they will never let us see?